Okay, so welcome everyone to the ARG UK AGM. We held it a little bit later in the year this year, but it's given us time to get our accounts together and get ourselves in order. So we're going to start off with a little bit of AGM business, which is part of our constitution. And if you bear with us on that, then we'll go through and we'll tell you more about the projects we're doing, some exciting new trainings, and our guest speaker. So the first thing we need to do is to vote. Hopefully we've got enough present to be quorate. I think we have. So I'm going to launch a poll, and what you need to do is to vote yes, no, or abstain if you don't feel you're a member or you don't want to vote. So these are our existing three of our existing trustees. Our trustees are rotated every 3 years in order that we stay lean and mean and fresh. And these three have agreed to stand for re-election. One is our chair, Chris Monk, Susie Collinson, also chair of Cumbria ARG, and Alice Paulick, who's based down in Devon and Cornwall at University of Exeter doing her PhD on biomes, skin biomes in amphibians. Just let that run for a few minutes. There's actually 4 questions. The fourth trustee on there is Catherine Worcester, who's our newest trustee. She's been elected by the board, but we need to ratify all elections at the AGM so that the members have had an opportunity to have their say. Yeah, so Chris Monk as chair, we've had 68% for. So he's duly elected. Susie Collinson, 74%, duly elected. Alice Paulick, 74%, duly elected. And Catherine Worcester, 71%, duly elected. So that's the trustee business. Yes. So this is Catherine. Catherine's our newest trustee. As I said, she's based in North Wales at Bangor. She has a bit of an affiliation there. She's also an independent consultant and an all-round good person. She also frequently turns up at the Hurt Workers meeting with a wonderful collection of goodies, including mugs and cushions with adders and sand lizards on. So I've got a house full of those already. So if you do see her at a meeting, pop in and say hi. Look at her lovely goods. I just also want to mention Steve Langham. Steve Langham stood down. We just want to say a huge amount of thanks to Steve. Steve has been an absolute powerhouse with our recording schemes. He's been our data officer. He's been a very wise person to go to and discuss any issues of that sort. So we just want to say a massive thank you for all his help and support. And not only has he been a trustee of ARG UK, but he's also been chair of Surrey ARG for many, many years, more than I can even count, probably 15 or so. So he's done an absolute sterling work, and obviously he's got a well-earned rest now. So we're all going to miss Steve. Hopefully he's still going to be peripherally involved, even as not as a trustee. As I say, I very much value his support over the years. So that's Steve. So moving on, this is, as I say, AGM business, which isn't possibly so exciting, but we need to do this. So this is just our statement of financial activities. And what we can see from that is our fund's grown very slightly in the last year. We made a very small surplus over the last year of 1,700. Our accounts look a bit up and down, but that's partly because we had a very large lottery project, and the way the payments are staged means that you build up a big surplus and then you sort of run it down over the course of the project. So we had 66,571 income. We spent 64,872. And that gives us a net surplus of £1,700, which we've added to our fund to take forward. And this is just a pie chart showing how our money is received and spent. You'll see we're quite reliant on the big grants to keep us going. We don't receive any what's the word, confirmed income. So each year we set out with high hopes and things seem to work out. So we've got the grants, we've got our fabulous individual donors who are so important. And I think what's really lovely about the individual donors is it's people who care about what you do, but also believe in what you do. So I think that they're particularly well received. And other income is where we've sort of done contracts for various bodies and individuals. And then we just get little bits and bobs in from events and training, a little bit of sponsorship. Most of our funds from last year were spent on projects. We had several very big projects. We had Dragons in the Hills, we had our prisons project and Cannock Chase project. So that's accounted for quite a lot of our expenditure. Small amount on salaries. The rest has gone on to travel. The insurance, we run the umbrella insurance for all of the ARG groups. We're lucky that enables us to be more cost effective. It means that 40 groups don't have to pay huge thousands of pounds to be able to go out and carry on doing work parties and activities. A little bit on office support. And as I say, something on volunteer costs. That's just where we've sort of reimbursed some of the volunteers for travel. So moving on. Now I'm going to talk about projects, which is the exciting bit. So we're very pleased to be invited by NatureScot to get involved with the Scottish National Adder Survey. The original survey was conducted in 1992 and 93 and published in 1994. So it's almost exactly 30 years, which is quite a big jump forward. So it was quite a lot to pick up in the early stages. We've got 16 sites confirmed. A few of the land managers couldn't be tracked down or weren't very excited about having volunteers on their land. So we had 16 in the end, which was really good. As you can see, that's given us a great coverage across Scotland, including the borders, the central area, the Highlands, and some of the inner Isles. And what was amazing was the response we had. I'm totally overwhelmed, I always am, by volunteers giving up their time to support any project. But this project was particularly amazing because it was covering such a huge area, and quite a lot of, when I looked at the photographs the volunteers took, some of them were marching for hours across sort of bogland and moorland and highlands, and really putting a lot of effort into getting to somewhere to look for the animals. So in the end, we completed 110 surveys between 2022 and 2024. Many volunteers. I think we had 102 signed up in the end, many of whom did actually go out. And NatureScot, some of our NatureSpot colleagues also went out. I should also say some of our amphibian and reptile conservation colleagues also went out, which was very good of them. And the most amazing was the last sort of blast for the project was the Duke of Edinburgh expedition, who were very keen to get involved. And I said, well, if you want to, please, this is what to look out for. And they did find an adder. And that was in Dumfries and Galloway. So I'm quite pleased about that because that was our only spot at that site. So brilliant effort by everyone. It does show what can be achieved with a lot of goodwill and a lot of impetus. And that's enabled us to produce this graph. It's not been fully analysed yet. I'm going to say colleagues at Amphibian and Reptile Conservation are doing the final analysis. We've just done a quick peak count, which is how we did make the adder count. The advantage of the peak count is that if you see 6 animals in one hit, there are 6 animals there. Whereas obviously if you go out 12 times and see 1 animal, you don't know if you're seeing the same animal or not. So we were very pleased to record adders at 9 of the sites. That's 9 out of 16. Common lizards at 13 sites. Perhaps not such a big surprise. Common lizards are fairly ubiquitous across Scotland. And slow worms at 5 sites. Now, this doesn't mean there are only slow worms at 5 sites, but as we'll talk about later in the workshop, they're quite a difficult animal to see unless you've got refugia, which we didn't use. and then notoriously they hide away. I went to an event on Sunday and I took 3 in a tank full of vegetation, and they all managed to bury themselves at the bottom. So I had to explain to the children that they were asleep and therefore couldn't be seen. We also recorded common frog, common toad, and I'm going to say small newts because surveyors weren't always very sure if they were smooth or parmate, although one suspects parmate. Sadly, no grass snakes. I was very, very hopeful we might see the elusive Scottish grass snake, but no, nobody managed to see that one. We had various sites that were amazing in different ways. We had a fabulous site in Aberdeenshire where large numbers of adders were reliably spotted, living in an old stone wall, which was acting as a hibernaculum. That's actually a Nature Scott reserve. So a big thank you to Nature Scott for looking out for those adders. And we had another site just down the road where we found a lot of common lizard. That site was a little bit higher and a bit more rocky, so maybe the lizards were easier to spot. I'm not so sure. Otherwise, as I say, we weren't expecting hundreds of animals given the sites were very large and hadn't been surveyed regularly, but we were very, very pleased to see as many adders as we did. And it's sort of given us a lot of confidence that they are doing well in Scotland. So hopefully, if Nature Scott are keen, we maybe in 30 years we'll do another one, who knows. So thanks to everyone that got involved with that and to our partners at Nature Scott and Amphibian and Reptile Conservation. So our next project is Dragons in the Hills. This was funded by National Heritage Lottery Fund, a partnership project working with Newry, Mourne and Down District Council, the Herpetological Society of Ireland, and latterly with ARDS and North Down Council. This is our final end of year celebration. The project ended at the end of last March, so really only just within our financial year. But we were very honoured, in fact, to have the chairperson of Newry, Mourne and Down District Council attend with his special chain. And the lady with him is from the board of the lottery, which was even more of a pleasant surprise, I should say. And these are some of our land managers, some of our groups and some of the children. We had a big event at the end where everybody got a certificate and did some activities and games. Unfortunately, it did rain, but this was Ireland, so they all seemed a bit nonplussed with that. This is also an opportunity to say thank you to our project officers. We actually managed to have 2 within the 3 years, the first being Josh Twining, who left to go and radio track bears in Cornell University, which I can't imagine why anybody would rather go and work with bears than lizards, but there we go. But we were lucky to recruit Ryan Montgomery, formerly of Bangor University, and he's worked the other 2 chaps in the background, the other Ryan Boyle from Northern Ireland ARG, and Rob Gandeler from the Herpetological Society of Ireland. And I'm absolutely going to say, without these guys on site, this project would never have worked. So it is an absolute tribute to their hard work and patience, and the fact that the communities we work with were so positive that we had a great project and we achieved a lot of what we set out to do. So that's kind of an ending, but there's never an ending. We've put in for another project. They'll be work in Northern Ireland, and fingers crossed that becomes funded. So this is another slightly unusual project for ARG UK. David Willis, our colleague from Hertfordshire, has done a lot of work. He worked in probation for many years, and he worked with prisons developing ecological techniques actually with prisoners, getting them out bottle trapping and torching and netting and things we never imagined were possible. We were lucky to secure 2-year funding. It's an HMPPS Innovation grant that had to have a tangible outcome for the prisoners. So we talked about reconnecting offenders in the criminal justice system with the natural world. We tended to work with prisoners who were already in gardens, but we did manage to work with some others. So we worked across 14 prisons, including male and female and different categories. So in the picture is a very high security, our highest security prison. And the guys got really enthusiastic, I have to say. I think the first time I went in, they all looked a bit sort of sideways as what is this crazy woman talking about? But then once they realised that there was going to be funding and they were going to be digging ponds with with machines, they were very super excited. So somehow or other, we overcame all the constraints of security and all the other things that operate within a high security establishment. And we dug ponds, and this is one of our ponds. And as I say, this is a pond plus, really. This particular prison dug 3 in the end. They got very carried away, and then the prison next door felt left out, so they dug 3 as well. So I'm going to say the pond in every prison scheme was very successful. And I think for me, the success of it was that we didn't just end up with an ornamental pond with a few fish swimming in it, but we ended up with proper big wildlife ponds. You can see in the background of that one, there's a shelving beach. There's lots of long grass around the edges and log piles. So they really embraced the whole concept of what a wildlife pond is. At the bottom is a different prison. They created a pond. They also created this beautiful wildflower garden, and that garden won an award at the local town, I'd say, in bloom. And that's a frog. We found frogs, we found toads, and we found newts. So we were happy with our amphibians as well. So a little bit of feedback from the prisoners. This is actual quotes from prisons or prisoners. The first one is, I went to view the pond and it was very ornamental with a lot of fish in it and a filter and all sorts. And I kind of puffed and puffed a little bit and suggested that perhaps we had somewhere for wildlife. So he's quoted that back in the evaluation. And now they've got a fabulous wildlife pond. The prisoners really enjoyed building the ponds. It seemed to give them a lot of a goal. It was something very tangible. They could produce it, they could admire it, they could tell everyone how hard they worked to do it. And they started to see wildlife come in, they were even more excited. So they like building the ponds, they like having the ponds, they like being able to sit near the ponds. There was a little bit more contention about the wildflower meadows. Security were definitely a little bit what's going on here, and we needed the governors to be on board above all else. And I think once the governors came on board and said, yes, we're going to have messy areas in the prison, everybody adopted it. So as he says, it's a fine line between conservation and mess, in inverted commas, as there always is. And again, this is at the bottom from some of our ladies. They really enjoyed it. They really got stuck in. I was amazed. They dug ponds, they dug orchards, they had beehives, they had wildflower areas. It's a real riot of colour. The other very nice thing about the prison project was we got this lovely recognition. This is for David Orchard, who's chair of our Lancashire ARG. And this is in recognition that the volunteers went into the grounds of HMP Wymot, and there were a large number of great crested newt ponds there that had been neglected, and a lot of trees had encroached and it got very dark and murky. So the volunteers gave up, I would say, 4 or 5 weekends each year to go and clear these trees. And as a result, sorry about my dogs, we got this amazing award, which is, I'm really pleased with that. I'm very pleased for David. So we supported 2 land manager days for adders in this year. One was on the Somerset levels. At the bottom, we can see John Dixon, who's chair of RAGS. With the RSPB, we had the Wildlife Trust, we had Natural England, we had all sorts of people. And we went out, as we do with our adder days, and we look at the habitat and we say, this is what works, this is what doesn't, this could be a hibernaculum, and just try and support the land managers to make good decisions for reptiles. On the right-hand side, we have Phil Playford from Shropshire and Staffordshire ARG. This was another land manager day that we ran with Cannock Chase, and the chap showing off the site is the local site manager for Cannock Chase Council, and that was really nice because it led us into a conservation project. One of the attendees of the course turned out to be the Farming and Protected Landscapes Officer, and he came forward and offered us funds to do surveys. So that led us on to this project, which was the Cannock Chase Adder Conservation Project, which was has been really interesting. We've only had a short amount of time because the fund is time limited, but we were able to bring volunteers from all the ARGs, all the local ARGs. So we had Birmingham and Black Country, we had Shropshire and Staffordshire, we also had Warwickshire ARG ran a training day for us, and some of these volunteers, as you might, those that know, from Nottinghamshire ARG, and we also have volunteers from Northamptonshire ARG. So we had this, again, a little bit like the Scottish project, lots of people kind of came to help man the pumps and get out and do some surveys. So we ran training. We've trained over 70 surveyors, which includes other people's volunteers, which is always good because that means we're leaving a nice legacy. And that led on then to this modelling. Emma has published these models recently, but we developed one for adder. And what we did there was to use expert opinions on what habitats are good for adder and what habitats are less good. And this was combined with the land cover data to provide a predictive model that would show where adders were. And then where the model said adders were or ought to be, we went out and we looked for them, and we found them. So we've been identifying new potential adder sites as well. I think it's all too easy to go back to the same site over and over again and see the same animals, and you've done your survey. But what was really nice about the Cannock Chase project was going to completely new places that nobody knew and finding the animals there. And I'm going to say Cannock Chase is pretty amazing for reptiles. So what did we find? So this is what the model predicts we're going to find. And what the top one is hibernation resources. So it's lit up, paler colours are good for adders. And the bottom one is foraging resources, and the darker green are good for adders. And you can see the two mapped together. And what we did was we went to those sites and we did find adders. So we're quite pleased with that. You can also see that there are two sort of islands, and one of the other positives to come out of the project have been discussions with Forestry England about creating a bridge, if you like. That's dense forestry between the two, and they're going to open up some rides to allow the adders to move between the two populations. So that was the good part of it. Slightly less good part of it was that the model also predicted other areas that would be really, really good for adders, and we couldn't find any. And I'm saying I'm sort of saying some of our best surveyors went out and combed and could not find adders. So we have to assume that they've gone. If they were there, they've gone. And it might be historic persecution, it might be disturbance, it might be loss of key habitat features. You can lose a few hibernation sites and you maybe have lost your population. What's interesting was that they did find common lizard at both of these places. So it suggests it's still favourable for reptiles. It also perhaps suggests that common lizard are either more resilient or harder to persecute. I'm not sure which. But I think what was slightly concerning, or a cautionary tale to come out of the modelling, is that we did a virtual experiment where we digitally removed the adders from Gentleshore Common, where in fact they have gone, which is this little triangular site bounded by the red line, and the model ran forward for 10 generations, and at the end of 10 generations the adders had not come back. So we could confidently say once they've gone, that there's not a free flow between those sites. And as you can see from the diagram, that the high foraging area, the very yellow area, that there's a lot of dark around that site, so there was nowhere for the adders to move through. What was a little bit more worrying is that once we knocked that population out and ran the model forward again, we started to see that other populations were also decreasing in brightness. And this is more of a concern because it implies that adders do exist as metapopulations across a landscape, and actually loss of one even potentially quite small and fragmented site does seem to affect the whole block. So this was of a cause for concern, but luckily because we got the project, we'd got 17 land managers on side, we were able to present this to them, and that made a case for urgency for reconnection, and we had such a positive response, and lots of hands went up in the room from National Trust, from the Wildlife Trust, from, as I say, Forestry England, to say, yes, we can do something with this. So I think it's a good example of what can be achieved, again, with a lot of goodwill. and the evidence to back it up. So that's our ADA project. Now I'm going to move over to Maya Evans. Maya's actually interning for ARG UK for her sandwich year as part of her undergraduate degree at Nottingham Trent. She was elected chair of Nottinghamshire ARG as well, so she's one of our youngest ARG chairs. So just again, it's a plea for we want to be an open and inclusive organisation, and age, no, there are no barriers. Everyone is welcome. If you're enthusiastic about amphibians and reptiles, then you are welcome to join as a member, join as our committee, become chair. We're always outward looking in that way. So Maya's going to be helping us with a new programme of training and events. So I'm going to shut up and hand over to her, and I'm going to go to her first slide. Yes.
Thank you, Angie. So I'll be discussing our new Great Crested Newt Survey Techniques training course. This course has been designed to support ARG UK affiliates, and it's a Natural England approved Great Crested Newt class licence reference. So it's like the FSC courses and the Frog Life course. So ARG will provide a standardised syllabus, and this will include 3 PowerPoint presentations. These presentations will cover Great Crested Newt ID and ecology, the survey techniques used specifically for Great Crested Newts, and how to generate a habitat suitability index, or HSI value. These can be used by any of our affiliated amphibian reptile groups, and these we can help organise mentoring opportunities to help our volunteers gain additional experience. So this course will hopefully allow those seeking a Great Crested Newt licence to accompany any ARG group that is running a suitable training course. So our aim is to maintain a central log of Great Crested Newt survey experience, so like a personalised log. This will include details of when, where, and who you had volunteered with. So how do you get involved with this course? So if your ARG is interested in running this course or getting involved in it, then please do get in touch with me, and you can email me at maya.evans@arguk.org. So we will also publicise a central list of dates and locations so that all of our ARG members or volunteers can join these events within their areas. ARG UK will also run additional sessions in central locations in spring of 2025. These ones will have a charge to them, but this is to cover venue costs and trainer costs.
Thank you, Maya.